Domination from DeBoer down in Tiger Stadium. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we saw in Death Valley as Alabama might have a new coach, but the same standard when they play LSU at night in Baton Rouge. A 42-13 victory against the Tigers. Real quickly, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the ring notification down below. That way you don't miss a single episode of SEC Unfiltered. We got post-game show, instant reaction, Dave Talk Ball, Sunday Funday, the Monday Morning Power Hour, college football playoff rankings, and a ton of other content on the channel. So make sure you don't miss out on any bit of it by hitting the subscribe and ring notification. Download the podcast version of the show, wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Make sure that you follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This postgame show is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. What better gift to give those in your life this upcoming holiday season than a RHOBACK pullover, a RHOBACK fleece, a RHOBACK hoodie, a RHOBACK pair of pants, whatever you see fit from RHOBACK. Make sure that you're dressed to nine this holiday season when you go to RHOBACK.com. Use the promo code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall. Tell them that the fine folks at SEC Unfiltered sent you by using that promo code SECU. Dave, it wasn't a performance to remember through the air, but it was to remember on the ground. Jaylen Milroe stepped on up and once again showed why he is one of the most lethal players with a football in his hands. 4 touchdowns on the day, and as soon as we got into halftime, it felt like it was a one-sided, lopsided score coming out of the break, and immediately, same thing. Bama's back. Bama's right back in the conversation about being in the front runner seat for the driver in terms of the national championship. And it's really hard to kind of pinpoint where is their fault with this team when they look like they did tonight.
Yeah, you've Kalen DeBoer, you've Kane Womack, Nick Sheridan across the board. Outside of maybe some special teams plays, it was as perfect of a game plan you could draw up all week. I kept saying, if you be patient with this LSU defensive line, and I thought Alabama's offensive line was by far the best offensive line this LSU front has seen. If you stayed committed to it, you could do it. Jaylen Milroe did not have to throw a lot. Bama ended up rushing for, right here, I got it, 311 for an average of 6.5 yards per carry. I mean, just dominated on the ground. Phenomenal game plan. We're patient with it from the get-go. I'll say this. This ain't even the most complete game from an Alabama perspective with just Kalen DeBoer. I'll say when you factor in the context and the road game and the situation that we're in, probably the most dominant true road game performance. Man, I mean, do you even count a 2020 season? Like, because it wasn't a full stadium. I mean, I'm trying to think.
It was, for more than better the word, the most dominant performance I have seen from Alabama on both sides of the football with a consistent execution on special teams, on defense.
Only 7 penalties, Cole?
And more importantly, a team that feels like it's just hitting its stride at the right time, which is really mind-boggling compared to what we saw after that Vanderbilt game, after how they responded in the South Carolina matchup, after how they played going into the Tennessee matchup. All these things aside, Dave, I think the biggest takeaway is, number one, don't ever judge a book by its cover, because so many people were ready to hop on off the DeBoer Express. So many people thought that Kalen DeBoer was in over his head. We got to turn the corner. We got to go ahead and get a new coach in here, somebody that fits the mold of what Nick Saban would have wanted. And sometimes you just got to take a deep breath and understand things will transpire the way that they have to. Things will go according to plan. You won't see Rome built in a day. What you will see is continued growth, some trials and tribulations, and how you respond in that moment is truly what emphasizes who you are. This is one of those games where a lot of the DeBoer doubters kind of have to sit back, eat a little bit of crow, and learn to pipe on down, because there was always going to be that necessary growth and adjustment. It was a new coaching staff. It was a new personnel. It was a new leader in the locker room after 16 illustrious years in Titletown. But that didn't mean that this team was not going to live up to the expectations in the primetime matchups. They got to win against Georgia. They got to win on the road against LSU. And now they firmly sit inside the driver's seat for a college football playoff berth. They may not go to Atlanta, but they certainly...
They're in the driver's seat of that now, Cole, if you look at the percentages.
But you can't say at this point, 10-2 Alabama's not getting it. Number one, it's Alabama. The script A is going to carry a lot of weight. But number two, they have 2 of the best wins in college football.
And LSU on the road. Another thing, they haven't played a team with a losing record.
Nope. And so you add all this together, you got to feel pretty confident about the direction that Alabama's going in. Let's talk about Jaylen Milroe. As we always do, we start on the show. He was overall exceptional. Even though he didn't find his way to the end zone with the passing attack, still, you can't really get that mad when you're completing over 60% of your passes, 12 of 18, 109 yards, 185 yards on the ground, 15.4 yards per play, the 72-yard run, which is the icing on top of the cake in the fourth quarter. This was one of those games where I said during the preview, Alabama has not shown you who they truly are. Jaylen Milroe, after literally kind of pulling himself through the finish line to the bye week, was always going to have to be an X factor in this game. And he was. And when you need him to step on up, number 4 was the number 1 answer. Yes, you saw some big-time catches from Ryan Williams. Yes, you saw some trickery with Nick Sheridan's play calling. But ultimately, what is the base of your organization? It's Jaylen Milroe and the mobility on the ground. This was always going to be a physical matchup. This was always going to be a game that was won in the trenches. And how much can you sustain success with the rushing attack? Having a quarterback that you went through a test for when it comes to his legs, when it comes to his arm, and when it comes to his mobility behind the line of scrimmage to create those opportunities, that, my friend, is exactly what you saw tonight from Tuscaloosa's finest.
Yeah, I thought it was a game plan they stayed committed to. I think that's something you have to take home with. Because I said you have to stay committed. You can run on LSU. No one has attempted to really consistently do it. They did. Weren't stubborn. All year, Alabama had been pretty stubborn and trying to just throw and sling the football around. They looked at the bye week was going to get Jaylen Milroe in his career, coming off bye weeks 3 years in a row, or 3 times now since he's been a starter. LSU last year, I think he's combined for 7 rushing touchdowns?
7 rushing touchdowns.
He had a big game last year off a bye week. Had a big game against Georgia off a bye week. This past week, going into tonight, had a big game off a bye week. It rejuvenates him. He looks more explosive than he did previously in the weeks against like the South Carolinas, Tennessee, and Missouris of the world. Overall, offense did a phenomenal job. And everybody's going to talk Jaylen Milroe, and he did have a phenomenal job. You have to give your flowers or his flowers to Cade Womack and his defensive staff. That is almost – they finished an SEC game, barely. Almost finishing an SEC game without giving up a touchdown. 2 games in a row.
I say, Dave, we're nearly at 8 quarters where Kane Womack's defense has completely turned the corner, and now they're not allowing explosive plays. They're creating turnovers, and they're keeping teams out.
Mixed it up. For now, dude, you can tell Nuss was wrong a lot.
Yeah, like very wrong.
They're coming, and they bail, and he check it off to a screen. It's like, dude, Bama outnumbers you out there on the perimeter. It's like, dude, when he didn't think they were coming, he would drop back and get get pressure and have to throw away, and he was wide right, wide left all the time too. Bama got some pressure a little. I mean, the sack numbers weren't great, but again, Nuss is one of the better guys to maneuver in the pocket. But Bama was they were in his face a lot. They affected him a little bit. You could tell he was not all right tonight. But Bama's defense, man, give them credit. Bray Hubbard, kid from my hometown, coming up delivering, number 18, coming out there delivering some big hits on the running back in the flat, had an interception late in the game. Overall, Jones, the Deshaun Jones kid,
Deshaun Jones had a good game.
Had a big game when Devontae Smith went down. He had a couple injuries on the back end. Bama took some lumps. It looks like Quay Robinson may be out for a while. So that's unfortunate. But overall, the defense got to be jacked about that performance. They played, let's be honest, Cole. You could nitpick the Tennessee game a little bit, but really, since the Vanderbilt game, they haven't been bad. And tonight they were phenomenal.
You know what it's been, Dave? If we're being completely honest, they've beaten themselves more than they've actually allowed teams to beat them. And even in the Vanderbilt game, Vanderbilt was able to capitalize on their mistakes. If they don't throw the pick 6, is Alabama sitting with 1 loss, and it only comes to Tennessee. Outside of really that performance in Tennessee in the second half, where, again, Jaylen Milroe, 2 interceptions, really rocky, bad interception in the fourth quarter, they've only beaten themselves more often than not. And give a testament, again, Vanderbilt this season, you got to give a lot of praise to how much growth they've shown. But the South Carolina game, they allowed South Carolina to hang around. South Carolina took an advantage, and Bama was able to come back and respond. Bama had to prove that they could come back and respond. But most of the times that we've seen teams be able to kind of take leads and keep things close for comfort, it's been because of Alabama shot itself in the foot. And this was one of those games where they realized, nope, we're in Death Valley. This is a place where we have won more often than not. Brian Kelly, he's got to get this win.
1970, Cole.
It's one of those things where sometimes history finds a way to dominate. And this is, again, one of those moments where even though it's a new coach, same standard in Tuscaloosa.
Cole, you know what I give some shout outs to as well? I talked about their coordinator, and I've been hard on this kid. And again, I think it's deserving. But tonight, got to give him his flowers, just like I gave Janelle Guerrero his compliments, tip of the cap after the Texas game. Jahad Campbell for Alabama.
Good game.
Like people were because I mean, you watch him at times, like, dude, people are projecting a first rounder. It's like, dude, I mean, outside of him just physically, 12 tackles, 6 solos, a sack and a half, 3 TFLs, and a pass deflection. I mean, dude just dominated. Like, phenomenal game. Felt comfortable. You could tell he had that edge to him, was talking a little crap to LSU's offensive line. You could tell he's in there playing phenomenal, right? Defense across the board, man. You're fired up for that unit. You're fired up there. Because, Cole, like we talked about, it feels like that Vanderbilt performance has lingered over them all year. Like, it's just kind of like people can't get that out of their head. I mean, fair enough. I think about it too. But, like, it's really just South Carolina. I mean, they don't give up the 4th and 9 right before the half. They may run away with that. It means it wasn't like South Carolina was all over going up and down the field. They were okay in that game. Gave up some big plays. Tennessee, first half, they gave up 0 points.
Yeah.
They gave up some big explosive runs in the second half, but still it wasn't bad. They didn't lose that game because of their defense.
But Missouri, you can say that also right now it's because of Alabama shots up in the foot in those games multiple times.
Against Vanderbilt. I mean, Vanderbilt was just a total.
No, but I think also against the Tennessee game, they shot us up in the foot.
Late in the game, late in the game. I would put that loss on the offense. I don't
sure.
No,
100%.
Overall, I mean, what are you complaining about in this game for Alabama, really? I mean, nobody got enough touches in the passing game. That's it. But hell, you ended up winning by 30-something points, man. So,
is anybody really going to complain if you have 4 touchdowns from your starting quarterback?
No.
I think so.
Dude, Cole, I tweeted it. Who had on their bingo card Ty Simpson would play tonight? Bless you, good sir.
Thank you.
Who do you think had Ty Simpson on their bingo card playing tonight and Jaylen Milroe not getting hurt?
The biggest Alabama truthers who never sold their stock on Kalen DeBoer, even with a loss to Vanderbilt. Honestly. And most of those Alabama truthers are probably selling their stock and having to try to rebuy it in.
And I never got that. Dude, even if he went 9-3, wouldn't have been, again, disappointing year. I always said, and I think I remember listening to some of your stuff too, when you were talking about Bama's expectations this year. Again, they have 3 games left: Mercer, Oklahoma, and Auburn. For conversation's sake, let's say they finished 10-2. I think me and you would both agree that was just make the playoffs. After that, 10-2 transition year, you take it. 9-3 wouldn't have been the end of the world, but there would have been a lot of people who would have been upset. And I think it'd been fair to say it'd been disappointing.
Do me a favor, Dave. If you switch out one loss from Vanderbilt to Georgia or Vanderbilt to LSU tonight, and they still go 10-2 and they make the college football playoff, is anybody really complaining this year?
No.
That's the point.
Dude, I mean, we're going into the bye week, Cole. I was saying that because, like, I mean, I had them at 6-2 going to the bye week with losses to Georgia and Tennessee. It's just like if you flip the Vanderbilt and Georgia, like you said, Vanderbilt Georgia losses are flip flop them, vice versa. You'd be like, yeah, not a bad season so far.
Nobody would be complaining. I don't think many people would be complaining if it was the South Carolina game. If you remembered what South Carolina is right now. Now, some people would probably say Alabama shots up in the foot, but knowing what South Carolina has been this year, how dominant their defense has been, many people would probably at least understand it better. But it's Vanderbilt. They don't lose to Vanderbilt. The talent level at Vanderbilt is always inferior. So people can't understand that part. But you get a win on the road. You now have 2 exceptional victories against quality opponents. But the question turns to now for LSU. LSU, at this point, is a little infuriating for multiple reasons. Let's start off with the first. Brian Kelly said judge him in year 3. So here's what we have to judge him off of. You get a signature win on the road where many people would probably wonder, was that penalty against Kyle Kennard actually real? And should Nick Emmanwori be in the end zone to where they take the lead in South Carolina? You have a loss to a USC team that is struggling right now. You have a loss to a Texas A&M team that got boat raced by another opponent that you should have beaten outright in South Carolina or nearly beat you. And you have a loss to Alabama with a new coach, a ton of problems, questions galore about the roster reconstruction. And this was a moment where Brian Kelly can say, I win in Death Valley at night. Because that's all he does. And you said, judge you in year 3. And that was a game plan that, honestly, when you look from start to finish, was ugly. Well, I mean, just disrespectfully ugly.
Game plan and the lack of second half adjustments.
It was disgustingly ugly. And it never felt like Joe Sloan felt comfortable calling plays. Garrett Nussmeier certainly did not look like his usual self. Even with the usual
back-to-back games, too, within a 3-week period that you've had a running quarterback just run all over your ass.
And again, Blake Baker showed you a couple weeks ago. how dominant he can be as a play caller, especially in that game against Ole Miss. You look back at that Ole Miss game a few weeks ago where they were able to eliminate the ground game and, more importantly, take out Jackson Dart's legs. And you thought, okay, they have turned the corner. This is a performance that you can hold your hat on if you're Blake Baker. This is one to where you can utilize this as a catapult toward going to the college football playoff, to going towards the SEC championship game. You got to win against a team that many people believed, yours truly did, was going to be in the hunt to make it to Atlanta. First time going to Atlanta this year. And you dominated them on the ground and forced Jackson Dart to win through the air. And then Prudy could come back in the fourth quarter and pull away with the victory of all victories.
Yeah.
And yet you had a week to prepare. And Alabama in a week looked like a team that was well equipped, that didn't shoot itself in the foot, that constantly wanted to continue to pile drive forward, that had an identity, that had an execution game plan, that realized we had to fit in form-fitting spaces. We had to deliver clean tackles. We're not going to penalize ourselves. We're going to create turnovers. And LSU was just like, yeah, we'll show up to the game. Yeah. We're here. Yeah. No. Death Valley at night. That's what carries us in this game. Death Valley at night is what makes us an unstoppable force. Guys, do you not understand that when Les Miles said this is Death Valley, a place where dreams truly come to die? There was a little asterisk there where underneath die, where it said, except for Alabama, because of Alabama has owned that rivalry in Death Valley. And the only thing that you can hold your hat on is, well, Brian Kelly won at night against Nick Saban, and it's a first-year head coach. You couldn't just bet on laurels in this game. You had to have an executional game plan, and especially you had a litmus test 2 weeks ago and a bye going up against Marcel Reed, another mobile quarterback who can't throw the football consistently. Jaylen Milroe can, and they beat you at it, and they beat you on the ground, and they beat you consistently on third down, and they lived in second and manageable. There were a handful of critical stops that LSU was able to capitalize on, and if they didn't do that, then unfortunately they were off to the races. It just felt like it was a lost cause for most of the game.
Yeah, I feel like this has been 3 years building. The personnel, again, last year wasn't great, and what Matt House was doing defensively wasn't great either. I think this is just 3 years coming, man. And it's Brian Kelly's fault from a perspective is you hired the wrong coordinator right out of the gate. Hell, you let Blake Baker go. He was on staff already, and you let him go and be the DC at Missouri. I think the defensive coaches there are going to be good. They're going to get the most out of them. Blake Baker, Bo Davis, etc., are going to be a good defensive staff. I just think this is Brian Kelly got off to a bad start recruiting with a defensive staff that didn't really recruit that well or couldn't identify talent 3 years ago when he took over that job in December of 2021, January of 2022. And the lack of talent really affects this team now. Again, Jacoby and Guillory's injury on in the interior of the defensive line is now starting to stick out. You saw Alabama, the best offensive line they've seen all year, especially the best interior offensive line with Parker Brailsford, Tyler Booker, Jaden Roberts when he was playing, or Gino Vandermark when he came in. I think that's what it is. It's just lack of personnel. And this is Brian Kelly's fault because from everything I'd heard, I don't think he really understood the lay of the land of the state of Louisiana when he came in and how political that state is, because you were the only big team in the state. And there's tons of talent in that state where there's some political takes you got to take. And he wasn't very involved in that. And I think that has backfired, and they're feeling it personnel-wise defensively this year. And I think that comes up to this week because, again, I think Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan are some of the best schemers in the entire country. Easily top 3. You can maybe make a case top 5. They do a phenomenal job game planning. And again, I think they saw a lot of lack of athleticism, size, speed that LSU should be having that we're accustomed to seeing. They took advantage of it. Jaylen Milroe is the best athlete on the field out of the 22 people that were on the field when Alabama's offense was on the field and LSU defense was on the field.
Dave, let me just run this down for you. Alabama, more first downs. Alabama, better on third down.
What game ended up going for third down, dude? It was unbelievable.
10 of 13.
Yeah.
10 of 13.
7 to 9 last time I looked. Yeah.
And also they were 0 for 1 on fourth down. That was it. More passing yards, more yards per attempt. No, not more passing yards. My apologies. More yards per attempt. Higher completion percentage. More rushing yards. More yards per attempt on the ground. The same amount of penalties. Fewer turnovers. On-time possession. LSU led in one category offensively. Fourth down conversions. They were 2 of 3. That was it. They could not get Alabama off the field. They could not consistently be able to stop Jaylen Milroe. They allowed far too many explosive plays. And I understand this. You knew that going into the year, and I brought this up so many times, the teachers are better than the students, but also when you have other really good teachers out there, guys who know how to wake up and actually put together a game plan with the X's and O's that can deliver dominance and beat anybody on any given Saturday, the way that Alabama has the talent and the constructed personnel that can beat you at your own game, you have to deliver an A-plus performance. And sometimes you need to get better students. And that was kind of the case today, was that they didn't have the personnel up front. They didn't have they certainly did not have the defensive line today. That was a big, you were trusting so much of Whit Weeks and Greg Penn to have to make open space tackles. You were telling your secondary to have to come down to the box.
They missed Harold Perkins. They've been better without him recently. That was a guy as an athlete that you could have put as a spy on Jaylen Milroe and limited him. Like that, not completely, but definitely better than they did. I mean, you didn't have an athlete between Greg Penn and Whit Weeks, like you mentioned, to keep up with Jaylen Milroe at the second level.
And the other part that was really frustrating was that whenever Alabama needed a big play, they got it. And so if you're sitting there and you're an LSU
down,
and if you're sitting there and you're an LSU fan, you're saying to yourself, what are we doing? Because you want to know what the difference is between this year, Dave, and years past. LSU can run the table. They can go 9-3. They can go to a bowl game, go 10-3 on the year, as they have the last 2 years. And everyone's going to look at LSU and say failed season. Because if it's different with the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
When it's not a 12-team playoff,
it doesn't amplify.
It is what it is. Yeah, okay, one team from the SEC is going. It's Texas. It maybe is Ole Miss. It maybe is A&M. It maybe is Alabama at this point. You can live with that. But in a 12-team playoff where 4, if not 5 teams from the conference are going to go, and you're on the outside looking in, it's a bad look with 10-3.
I
It's
agree.
almost unstoppable.
No, it's a good point. It amplifies your miss. You're right. You know what I mean? Where it's like, well, everybody else except Alabama missed it too. So who cares? Like you said, but it's like there's 4 teams in the playoff, and we're going.
If not 5.
Think about this too. We're going to another Outback or Citrus Bowl. Like, dude, that gets old. Like, you're right. So, dude, this is a game I think I can't wait to go watch some of these post-game LSU reactions after this. But like, because I want to get kind of a pulse of kind of the lay of the land of this fan base now. Because this wasn't just, as you know, Cole. This wasn't just a loss. This was a beatdown in your home stadium where it was like our season
with the new head coach.
And our season's on the line, and this is what we showed. This is what we came out with. It's like 9-3 this year. What'd you have LSU going into the year?
9-3.
That's what I had them too. I had them 9-3.
I had them. I had them
about what I thought they would be to a point. Like I was completely off on South Carolina, but LSU was a team that I'm like, yeah, like 9-3. I just didn't think that. I thought the defense would catch up to them at some point. And again, I mentioned it, and I think you agree too. It wasn't because of the coaching, but at the SEC level, when you're competing for SEC championships, and that's the expectation at a school like LSU, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's, or Les Miles would not have won as many games at LSU as he did.
He had elite talent. And unfortunately, when you look at a guy like Brian Kelly, who I still believe is an exceptional coach, I get it. I know he has a bad rep. I understand everything that happened at Notre Dame. He's a good coach. The problem is that they expect more. Will Campbell said at the start of the year, 10-2 gets you fired here. They're not wrong. Les Miles, if he just lets go of Cam Cameron, maybe he's able to sustain another year. Ed Orgeron, 2 years after winning a national title, shown the door.
Yeah.
And this is Brian Kelly. And this is a Brian Kelly who left South Bend, Indiana, because if he said, I've reached my limit, I can't sustain anymore. I still believe he's the right guy. The problem is that you said judge you in year 3. Okay, so judge you in year 3. Here's what we have to judge you off of. The loss to USC looks worse. You survived a scare with South Carolina. You lose in emphatic fashion to a team that had flaws and lost to Vanderbilt on the road. And Diego Pavia said, Vanderbilt, we effing turned, and was able to make a huge showcase out of it. Had struggles against South Carolina. Has had one really good game since beating Georgia. Oh, and on top of all that, you also beat Ole Miss, who just beat Georgia, and you two look like you're going in completely different directions.
Cole, what are we saying? You think if LSU didn't win that Ole Miss game, they're sitting here at 8-4?
They could be sitting here at 7-5
with South Carolina. Yeah,
they could be sitting here at 7-5 this year. There's a legit scenario where that happens.
Yeah,
I mean, like LSU led for 0.0 seconds in that game. They had one play where they got a lead, and it was the last one. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
And as we mentioned, we can agree to disagree, but the penalty for roughing the passer on Nussmeier doesn't get called. That's an L.
Yeah. And again, in regards to that, what we can also say is, as much as we can agree that that was a great performance defensively from LSU, How many times did Ole Miss find a way to shoot itself in the foot and give LSU the ball back to be able to score?
Yeah.
And if not for a gutsy play from Garrett Nussmeier on a 4th and 5 where all you needed to do was get the first down, you call Verts and Aaron Anderson's in the right place at the right time, that's a loss because it doesn't go to overtime. That's a drop ball. Jackson Dart takes a knee, and we're talking about now Ole Miss probably feeling pretty confident going to the SEC championship game in 3 weeks. I mean, like, that's the honest truth when it comes down to it. That's where we are. Brian Kelly this offseason, regardless of what happens with Garrett Nussmeier, regardless of what happens with talent that decides to either go to the NFL draft or return for another year, they got to open up the playbook. They got to open up the checks. They got to bring in defensive talent, and they got to be able to let Blake Baker work because of, once again, it feels like you're right there and then you're not. 2 years ago, you felt like you were right there. You got to the conference championship and you fell short. Last year, you had an offense that was good enough to win a national title. Look at the talent that currently is in the NFL with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Jaden Daniels and what they're providing for their teams. And tell me that you don't feel foolish for not going out and hiring Blake Baker or bringing in some defensive talent to be able to better than what you had.
Just keep him on staff. I mean, I get from a perception standpoint, you can't do that. And I know Brian Kelly was promising everybody Marcus Freeman was coming with him. Obviously, he wasn't when he got the job.
Well, yeah, but again, he didn't come because if he got a promotion. And that was a pretty damn good promotion at the point.
You talk about Marcus Freeman?
Yeah, Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, for sure. No, but I think Kelly, when he interviewed for the job, was telling people Marcus Freeman was coming with him, and so was Tommy Reese, which obviously didn't happen. But no, I mean,
it would be fair if they didn't hire Marcus Freeman, he would have been down at LSU and he would have been the highest paid defense coordinator.
No, but Tommy Reese wouldn't have went with him.
No, Tommy wouldn't have, but Marcus would have for sure.
No, but I just think this is a total. You just missing the lay of the land when you first got there, and you're paying for it in year 3, which is traditionally a year at places like Cincinnati and Notre Dame. You've taken that next step. But I think it just caught the lack of someone in a recruiting department pointing you in the right direction. Matt House's inability to recruit people. This loss is on Frank Wilson, who tried to run the entire recruiting department. These are the kind of games that steps up to you. See anyone tweeting it out that you respect from an LSU perspective. It's like, man, we just do not look their personnel on defense. And like, yeah, you don't. Like, in Alabama, just out game plans you. That was an embarrassing loss. And if it doesn't change for Brian Kelly, and we're looking in 3 years or so, because I don't think LSU has the money to fire him in the next 2 years. But in the next 3, this would be the one that got it started. But man,
he lost some people tonight. He 100% lost some people that he will never gain back. He did. And it's going to be that way. For Alabama, though, and I do want to end with this. When you look at Alabama, not based off their schedule, because their schedule, if they play this brand of football, they will go 10-2. 10-2 with that script A, with Kalen DeBoer, with Jaylen Milroe, with Ryan Williams, with this defense the way it looked, they're going to the playoff. There's no second doubting it. They're already in the playoff hunt because they're the number 11 seed. They're going to move up this week. We all know that they will. When they play the way they played tonight, knowing that they can run the football efficiently, knowing that that defense is able to deliver, can they beat anybody in the college football playoff?
Oh, yeah, and I do. I mean, we keep talking about the rushing attempts. The stuff I was concerned about, only 7 penalties. I mean, compared to 15 they had when they went to a similar opposition in Neyland Stadium a couple of weeks ago. You keep it to single-digit penalties in a road environment and 0 turnovers, and you won the turnover battle +3, so you're +3 in turnover and 7 penalties. You win a lot of football games when you run the football like that. So, again, to your point, if they keep doing that, yeah, they're going 10-2, and they could have a chance to win the whole thing as long as they don't start getting something really bad.
I think the other thing that was really important was their ability to win on third down. And not just win on third down, but stop opponents from converting on third down. The fact that you were able to basically make it a 50-50 game, that benefited you because it hurt you against Georgia in that comeback. It hurt you against South Carolina. It hurt you at times against Tennessee in the second half. Those are things that are critical to your success. And the fact that you were able to force a lot of 3-and-outs, the fact that you were able to put Garrett Nussmeier in third and uncomfortable, that will help you win against an Oregon. That will help you win against an Indiana. That will help you win against an Ohio State or a Penn State. And you may have to travel on the road, but you want to know what? It's okay if you have that game plan because you executed that performance tonight. One final thing I will say, a lot of people, a lot of Alabama fans, and you want to know what? Dave and I are allowed to have this conversation with you because we're Alabama grads. So we understand this. Do not judge a book by its cover. It may not be Nick Saban. it may not be the exact same as what Saban wanted. It may not be even close to the persona, the enigma, the personality, how you conduct practices, how you go through the daily process. What are the film studies like? What is the workout like? I understand it, but there is one of one Saban. Let me make this abundantly clear. There is one version of Nicholas Lou Saban, and he's not coming back anytime soon. And if you put pressure on a coach to be the exact entity of the guy that won 6 national championships, it is always going to come back to bite you in the ass, and the only person to be disappointed is you. The win that you saw tonight, the dominance that you saw tonight, the consistency that you saw tonight, the delivery and the perfection and the leave no doubt attitude that you saw tonight is why Kalen DeBoer was the first, second, and only hire available. And anybody who has said, go ahead and fire him, go ahead and give up on him because if he lost to Vanderbilt, you owe him an apology. You owe a lot of other people an apology too, because that type of performance is the one, if it's continuing success, is the one that will meet the standard set by those that bleed the crimson and cream. It is 100% the one that will bleed the crimson and white. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I think any logical person I don't think who would really be calling for this dude Ted, 10 games into a season, or 9 games into a season, in the first season. No. So, no, phenomenal win. And people forget, Kalen DeBoer has a phenomenal record in big games in his entire career.
He wins.
Dave Lanning 3 times in 2 years. He's beaten Steve Sarkisian twice in the last 2 years. He wins big games.
Dave, let's just go through this real fast. Steve Sarkisian, he's undefeated against. Dan Lanning, he's undefeated against. Kirby Smart, he's undefeated against. Brian Kelly, he's now undefeated against. I don't know what else you want to say. Lincoln Riley, let's throw him into the mix too. Yeah. Deion Sanders, let's throw him into the mix too. Those are people that you could say that he's gotten a couple wins over. So
no, but I think to the rest of the Bama schedule, I will say this: we've seen them not play great at times against some SEC competition, and Oklahoma's defense is good enough to keep them in the game. If Oklahoma will go do that for a minute, they don't eventually just quit because their offense can't do anything. But Bama is going to have to go play well, I think, in some of these games. I do think Hugh Freeze could scheme up, and God, that would only make his season winning that. So I think Bama's still going to have to play well, and we've seen them play really bad at times this year. So that's something to keep in mind. But tonight, that was the most complete game. Do you know what that game reminded me of? The 2015 Georgia game in Athens. If you the rain, it was wet, it was just dominant from start to finish, essentially.
Sadly, I remember
the worst thing that happened to Alabama right out of the gate was the 5-yard penalty to start it.
Sadly, I remember that game for completely different reasons, but we don't have enough time to break that down. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow Dave at Mock10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. By the way, you may want to hit that subscribe button and certainly hit that ring notification because we're going to be back here in 2 minutes to break down everything that we saw for outfield as Missouri. Yes, Missouri with Drew Pine found a way to survive a wacky, turbulent, what can only be described as the actual entity of the 2024 college football season out in Columbia. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Alabama dominates. Roll Tide is rolling. LSU. Well, go get some sleep. Peace.